So we're nearly at autumn now, and I've just done a video actually talking about how much I look forward to each of the seasons, and I really do look forward to autumn and winter. Particularly like autumn because I'm just clearing away the debris of summer and replanting everything in sort of new pristine beds that I've weeded, and of course they're going to stay fairly pristine because you don't get very many weeds in autumn and winter, and that's one of the massive bonuses, as well as not having to do much watering. And after, well, actually this summer has been pretty bad for watering for us, and I know some people in other parts of the country have had masses of rain, but you know, we really haven't had it here in the northwest of England. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and today it's a big clear and plant day, so it's one of my favourite types today on the allotment. I try and get one day one day a week in autumn when I'm dedicating my time to clearing and planting, and I try and get at least one bed a week cleared and replanted, and today I might even get 3, so that'll put me ahead, and I always like being ahead. So let me show you what I'm planting today. So over the next few weeks I'll be working my way through the plot and getting everything replanted that's not already planted for winter at the moment. And generally speaking, the main things that are going to get replanted are the things that are under these plastic covers. So these are all peppers at the moment, and so they'll be all coming out through October, and all sorts of goodies will be going in those. But for now, I'm targeting this bed. So this is a bed of French beans, and they're coming to the end now, and so I'm going to take those up. I'm going to compost everything, including the old beans, because what I find is that those old beans, they just germinate in the compost in spring next year, and then they die in the compost. I won't be using that compost until autumn, so I'm quite happy to have the beans in there and all their extra nutrients. So a myth still persists on the internet that the roots, that beans add nitrogen to the soil, and whilst that's true, up until the point at which they flower, they then use that nitrogen in order to flower and form the actual beans. And so there's no nitrogen left in the soil, but there is a lot of nice root mass that will rot down, and that's really great for the follow-on crop. And in this case, my follow-on crop is going to be brassicas. If there was any nitrogen in the soil, the brassicas will lap that up, but they'll also like the root mass. Even more though, they'll like the fact that I'm not going to disturb the soil. I'm just going to snip off with my shears the stem, and yeah, I'll just be left with these little bits here. I don't mind that, they'll soon rot off. If I was planting something that wasn't quite so big, you know, brassicas, I'm only going to get 9 brassicas in this bed. If I was putting spinach in here or something like that, then I might well pull the roots out. Alternatively, if I didn't pull the roots out, I would put a couple of inches of compost on top, and then I would plant the spinach into the compost, and they would then grow through the roots of the beans, because there's a lot of bean plants in here. I think there's you know, something like 100 plants or something, so there's a lot of root to get in the way of little tiny seedlings. But for 18 brassicas, 9 in each side of the bed, no problem at all. So I like to make my compost in a different way now. So I start with obviously my green waste. I give that green waste a really good chop up. And that's a pretty good workout in itself, but everything just breaks down and rots down so much quicker once it's been chopped up. And then what I do is I take the compost that I made probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, say, and I turn that over and cover this, rather than adding additional browns to the mix. And you can see there's still quite a bit of brown left in here from previous crops that I've chopped up, but you know, over the next probably 12 months this will all be rotted down as well, and the end result is a really fine compost that's absolutely full of nutrients. The only downside to making compost this way is that it's a little bit slower, but that suits me really, because I'd rather have slightly slower composting process but higher quality compost at the end. And the other downside is that it doesn't get very hot, and so weed seeds, sorry, get my breath back, weed seeds don't get killed by the heat. So I try not to put anything with a really robust seed in here, and I'll show you some of that in a few minutes. So I have all the worst of the perennial weeds on my plot, but the worst of it is the mare's tail and the bindweed. I don't fret too much about it, I just pull it out. I don't dig it out, because all that happens is it just sprouts multiple new stems from the point at which you pull it out. So yeah, so I'm just pulling it out. I don't compost it because I get a little bit paranoid about getting mare's tail growing in my compost bin, which has happened before. So when you clear a bed, it always amazes me just how much life there is scurrying around everywhere. So many little critters working hard for us in the soil. So I generally just leave the mare's tail to rot down in a bucket until it becomes a slimy mess, and then it goes in the compost bin. So this is what my homemade compost looks like. It's not so bad, still a few weed seeds in here. It's not perfectly sterile, which is unfortunate, but I don't bother sieving it, and I don't normally bother forking it like this either, but just to demonstrate the sort of consistency that I'm going for. And I think this is about 12 months old or thereabouts. If I do find any great big pieces in it, then I will just take those out and throw them back into the new compost pile. But it's quite nice. So I'm planting these nice and deep in little depressions, so they're actually at the soil level, and the compost is just like mounded up around them. These provide nice little watering holes as well. And these are little red sprout plants. Unfortunately, they've got a little bit of whitefly, so I'll spray those with a seaweed solution that I've got that seems to kill the whitefly. But you can only use it once the plants are a little bit bigger than this, so that's a bit of a shame. And then I'm going to put some curly kale down the centres, and then in all these gaps here I'm putting turnips. So that's all the kale's in. So I've got reflex down the centre, all the way actually down here. These lovely little red sprouts growing for the leaves, not for the Brussels sprouts. We've got plenty of Brussels sprout plants for the actual sprouts already. And then Carvalho Nero down the outside. And then in these little holes, that's where the turnips are going. So I will have one more sowing of turnips that gets planted outside, and that will go in this bed, and they're well on the way now, so they're only a few days away from being ready to plant out, and then the rest of them will get interplanted under these low tunnels into various different beds. So now, as quick as I can, I want to get a net over these, and I'm going to use the net that's currently over these purple sprouting broccoli. So that's one down, lots to go. So now I've got the nets off these. I've taken all of the kind of overlapping lower quality leaves off, and also anything that's got this fungal infection on it. And I can see everything that's going on in these beds now. much less likely to get problems with pests. So since I was working on this bed, I've also just put some support stakes in there. I use these fence pins, I really like them. Details are in my ebook, just search for fence pin. And yeah, they just last forever, and I got fed up of buying bamboo canes and scrapping them after a couple of years. So these are great. And so that bed is now, I think, big enough that the pigeons won't cause it too much trouble. I don't think they'll like these either, so I think they'll scare them off a bit. But if I do have any problems, I'll just drape some net over the top of the fence pins. So now I'm taking this golden purslane out. It's finished now and it's seeding. You see all these little seeds here, millions and millions of them. And so this is definitely not a plant to put in the compost unless you can get your compost really hot for a long time. They're a really resilient seed. So I'm quite happy for them to fall into this bed, because this is my golden purslane bed for next year. So they'll just self-seed and come up. But no, they're going in the green bin. So this is going to be the pak choy tatsoi beds. And I'm putting an inch of my own compost on top of just a sprinkling of horse hoof and horn. And I'm going to interplant this one with radish. There we go, so that's my holes. 20 for the tatsoi and pak choy, and 20 for the radish, and then the next batch of radish will go interplanted into that one. So that's the pak choy, little tiny ones, and the radish, and hopefully the pak choy will grow fast enough to compete with the radish, and hopefully the radish will be out anyway within about 3 or 4 weeks, so that's not so bad. The tatsoi were tiny, way smaller than the pak choy, and so I was a bit worried really about transplanting them. They didn't transplant brilliantly well, but I've got a spare tray on the go, so if ever any failures I can easily swap them out. But hopefully they will be a bit bigger by the time the radish go in maybe a week, maybe 10 days, something like that, so they will compete a bit better. And last week I also popped in this bed of lettuce. They are under a low tunnel just in case we get really rough weather in September, but most of the time it'll just be pushed back like this because they don't need any protection at all right now. I've just watered them, that's why they're all flopped over. So I've got so much planting to do that it's spilled over into another day, and I've just emptied out or cleared out this container that did have New Zealand spinach in it. And again, it's amazing to see the degree of shrinkage of the homemade compost, because when I put this in, I think it was about up to here, so it shrunk down about 6 inches, and it's also shrunk away from the sides, and I suspect that that is why this New Zealand spinach sort of finished a little bit early, because so much water was just running down the sides of the pots. So I'm going to take all these stalks out, push loads of compost down the sides and give this a really good water and top it up with compost. But I'm not going to top it up too much, just 2 or 3 inches, because the little what are they? Spring onions that I'm going to put in here will benefit from a little bit of shelter from the wind for their first few weeks of life. So I'm putting spring onions in here, and spring onions are a fantastic crop to go before summer veggies like courgettes and New Zealand spinach and the like, because they're always harvested in early and mid-spring, or at least a sowing that's made now is. And so, yeah, so they're always out of the way, and they don't deplete the soil very much. Now, I've left the roots of the New Zealand spinach in. There's a huge amount of root mass there that's going to rot down over winter, and then I'll probably put New Zealand spinach back in here again next year. So there we go. I am incredibly short of space right now for spring onions, so I'm just popping them in wherever I can find them, any room. And I will put most of mine interplanted into spinach and lettuce beds, but right now I don't have any spinach and lettuce beds, so this is the best I've got. So I might have already mentioned, but I'm trying to get onions planted everywhere right now. And so this time it's the turn of Toughball. And Toughball are a great overwintering onion, and they start bulbing in April, and so you're harvesting them in June, very early July. So they're great for anybody who's running out of stored onions in about May, June, and that tends to be the case for us. So this is about, I don't know, a sixth of our onions or something like that, and I'm going to clear this bench so that I can plant underneath it. So these are the Toughball onions that I'm putting in, and I could leave these longer. I could leave these until October before I plant them out, but I want to get them in the ground now because the ground is empty and I want to keep it hydrated. And that's one of the challenges with a polytunnel with an empty bed at this time of year, because if you don't keep watering it, then it's going to be very difficult to keep it healthy and get it rehydrated when you want to plant all of your winter veggies in October. And so I much prefer to put something in the ground now so that I can actually keep it hydrated. And that's going to be the same with a bed like this. So the only thing that's permanent in this bed is this parsley, and that's going to stay over winter. But all these lettuces and spinach and other things that are going to go in down this bed and that bed there, these have all been harvested now, and the beds are so incredibly dry, and obviously you don't want to water an empty bed, that's so wasteful. So I'm trying to make sure that they're all planted with temporary plantings that we're going to get a harvest from between now and early to mid-October when all of these get replanted. So yeah, that's my strategy basically. Keep living roots in the soil at all times, keep the beds watered, keep the soil healthy, and then you're going to get a good harvest come winter time. So I hope you like this quick planting video. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.